everybody. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Comedians Exposed. I'm your host, Deana Kobe, and this is the podcast where I get to interview comedians and ask them all kinds of terrible questions about what comedy is like for them and if it leaves them feeling vulnerable like it leaves me feeling vulnerable. Today's guest is hilarious, very musically talented. This person is also an improviser. You can check out their sketches on YouTube. Please welcome to Comedians Exposed, Melissa Surach. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about these terrible questions.
I'm sorry. I've realized, because I've been doing this, guess what? You were the 1 year anniversary episode.
Ooh.
Yes, this is super exciting.
I feel honored. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you. Especially too, like from knowing you and stuff. And I feel like you'll engage in this process because I feel like some people I meet will say, oh, I want to be on the podcast. And then I talk with them and it's like they're like, no, jokes, going for the jokes all the time, which is fine.
I've got no jokes.
Oh, you have so many jokes, but we also want to hear about the other side. Like, that's what I want to hear about is like, what happens when you're not making the jokes or when you're thinking about the jokes or you're making jokes, you know, about things that are like really crazy. Like one thing I wanted to dive right into is your sketch that you did during quarantine. So it deals with suicide, which I find to be personally hilarious. I love it was the Suicide Hotline, you know, and the premise was basically like, you know, the giving suggestions like, I'm broke, how do I kill myself? And it was really funny. But how did you receive that? I'm just curious, because I know on stage, whenever I try jokes about suicide, because I've been doing a lot lately now that we're out of quarantine. Like, people get uncomfortable. So how did you feel about releasing that sketch or making that sketch?
I mean, I do self-deprecating, like depressed, like suicide jokes a lot on stage. Sometimes I get the feedback that I am a little too self-deprecating, and I'm like, but you know, I hate myself. But for that sketch, I didn't really get any feedback. It was released in the middle of the pandemic, and it's on Judy's YouTube. I wrote it with Judy, and we were, you know, she was in Brooklyn. I was in Jersey City. We couldn't go anywhere because, you know, social distancing, and we didn't want to, like, you know, get on the train. So I don't know if she got any comments like sent to her, but I should ask her.
I didn't ask her when I, you know, talked with her. I should have asked her too. So we'll definitely have to circle back because, like I said,
like, Judy, did you get any death threats over that suicide?
Yeah, well, like it's funny because, like I said, it's like I remember when you guys did it. I thought it was hilarious, and like I said, it was like we were in such like. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I'm like, that stuff makes me laugh. Like when things are really fucked up, I want to watch stuff that's fucked up. You know, things were cuckoo last year and stuff like that. But it was like I said, since we've been back from quarantine or whatever, I've been trying stuff on suicide, and I notice it's like the audience is like, it's so. And it's like, can you hear the fucking joke? Like, don't get just caught up on this stupid little word, you know?
Right.
So because you said, too, you just mentioned, because you said you do a lot of self-deprecating stuff, and you've gotten feedback that you do it sometimes too much.
Yes.
Why do you think that people think that it's weird? Like, again, because you think back certain comics, there's like a certain style, you know, like I talk about, like, if you think Phyllis Diller, you know, or how that was like, again, that was, I feel like that's very much a clear vein in comedy history. So where do you think the pushback's coming from with that?
I don't know. I feel like maybe people are like, I came here, you know, I want you to make me laugh, not like make me feel bad. Like I'm being too much of a Debbie Downer, you know, but Debbie Downer is hilarious.
Especially too, like you think about the juxtaposition of like seeing a whole, especially if you're in a comedy show and you're seeing multiple people, or again, just like, I don't know, I like Debbie Downer too, like thinking about that whole persona of just kind of like, things are fucked up, and let me just hear it, how it's fucked up. And like the serious shit too. Like, you don't always want to hear dick jokes. It's like you want to hear jokes about things that are dark.
Sometimes you want to hear jokes that have a point, you know?
Yeah. What do you think, some of your, like, what are the things you try to make points about?
I make points about like sexism and mortality and I guess like the human condition. Whenever I have like a dry spell, um I like somehow always get like a rash that I could talk about on stage. And it inspires me. And all of a sudden I've got all these rash jokes, which are self-deprecating. But yeah. So just yeah, I guess like a equality as well.
Yeah.
But I also like to do jokes about like how shitty my dad is. You know.
So how much of your material would you say is like rooted in your truth or yourself or your, like basically I'm trying to figure out is how much of you are you willing to share with the audience?
I mean, a lot of it, I mean, it's all rooted in the truth, but I'll just like A to Z it, instead of like, A to C, like, this makes me think of this, which makes me think of that, and then just take it really far out. So it sounds crazy, but it came from a kernel of truth.
Yeah. So you like to just kind of like, because I really like, again, I try to get to the crux of it. Like, I feel like some people literally just, again, like thinking about their stand-up, they approach it solely from the perspective of like, I'm going to write a joke about, laptop computers versus, like other people who approach it like, I'm going to write about what's going on in my life.
Right.
And then build from there,
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're more in like that vein.
Yeah. It's more internal.
Huh?
It's more internal. And then, I expand outward.
So how'd you get into doing comedy?
I wanted to do comedy since I was in high school. Actually, Judy and I were going to try to do a public access show when we were in high school, and we put together a show at Maxwell's back when it was cool, in the 90s, to try to be a fundraiser so that we could put the show together. I think the show was called like Queen J and Lissa Lee or something stupid. And we did not make any money from the Maxwell show. I think that Judy got in trouble.
Oh no.
Out late. And then the guy who was like the booker and ran the soundstage asked me out, and I was like, I'm 15. And he was like, this was not a good, he's like, this was, you like, you didn't make any money, that's the way it goes. You're not, he was like negging me. So he was like, this isn't like, you're not cut out for this, all this stuff. Do you want to hang out sometime?
Oh my God. How old was he?
He must have been in his 20s.
Oh my Lord. Oh my Lord.
30.
That's so fucking insane, especially like thinking how ballsy you and Judy were at like teenagers.
Yeah.
Doing that fucking shit, going into Maxwell's, like making shows and shit, doing everything. And oh my God, it makes me so mad hearing that story, because like that guy literally was just trying to like take your power and shit. And like how much power you guys had. That's fucking so cool. And how did you respond to that afterward? Like, did that just kind of like drive you more?
No, I was depressed for a little bit. And, then I but I mean, I always wanted to write. Like I would write sketches and stuff. And then when I went to university, I became the editor-in-chief of the school's humor magazine. And I was like, that's it. Like, I'm totally gonna like write for SNL after college. I thought that was an attainable goal, but it wasn't.
That was what you initially, though, when you started comedy, you were like sketch writing and you wanted to be a
sketch writing
writer?
and humor writing, like writing essays, like humorous essays.
So then what made you
and putting together sketch shows.
what made you then make the leap? Because to me, I feel like sketch, is it's of course comedy, but it's also a different skill set. Like I've
Yeah.
worked with other people to write sketch, and it's, again, it's like this much more fluid thing versus stand up. It's like you're by yourself in stand up. So what brought you to doing stand up from sketch?
So I started producing shows in Jersey City, and I had to like host it, and had to try to come up with jokes. So that's how I started doing stand up. And then I didn't really get and I was in sketch groups at like the Pit, but I didn't really get into stand up until like a couple of years ago, like when I met you. And then I started relearning how to play guitar, and now I do musical comedy too. So
Gentrification, gentrification.
right. Gentrification sandwich.
Yeah, I love sandwiches too. So it's like something I loathe and something I love, so conflicting.
Mhm.
So I just sing the gentrification part, because then if I sing the sandwich part, my heart breaks
Makes
a
you
little.
makes you
Because
like
it was a
it.
bad sandwich that you got. I remember it.
Right. It was a bad, expensive sandwich.
Yeah, that's the
And
worst
now
sandwich.
that place doesn't exist anymore because it made expensive sandwiches that were not worth it.
Hey, people listening, there is a business model lesson right here. Don't make shitty sandwiches that are too costly.
Right.
You will
Right.
lose the business.
Mhm.
So you crossed over. So what do you like better than sketch or stand up?
I like sketch. You have to organize. You need to like schedule meetings. You need to rehearse. You need to uh, get people. You need to like get people together and organize them. And as you know, a lot of comedians are not very willing to to like get everyone together in the same room at the same time.
You can't even get them to stay in the room for a mic.
Right, exactly.
Because
So stand up is definitely easier to work on.
yeah, you don't need all of that. What do you feel more vulnerable doing, stand up or sketch?
Stand up.
Yeah.
Because with sketch you're with a team, it's written, you've already tested it out before, a bunch of times before you perform it. With stand up it's like, you're just like up there by yourself in the void, just shouting into the void,
Oh yes, yes.
hoping that you'll be accepted.
Well, first off, I want to ask, what does it mean for you to be vulnerable? What does that word mean to you?
Um, uh, Sharing things that would otherwise be I would keep to myself as a secret, you know. Um, so doing stand up is vulnerable to me because I am scared like all the time. So I started doing improv to like get over stage fright. And I just started doing burlesque too to be more comfortable on stage and in my skin, because otherwise I'm just like really stiff and awkward. Um, and I don't know how to use it. But yeah, it's just but I guess I just like live vulnerably all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like,
I'm just like because my day job is a beer rep, so I'm always open for attacks. When you're on stage by yourself telling jokes, you're always open for attacks. When you, as a writer, because I'm a freelance writer too, I'm always open for attacks. Every time you put something out into the world, you open yourself up to criticism, and you just have
people are
to,
quick to criticize,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and you just have to, accept that and just not let it get to you.
What do you do? How do you not let it get to you? Is there any particular like coping mechanism or thing that you'll do or tell yourself?
If I'm like, fuck this guy, who does he think he is? And then I'll like make fun of him
Yeah.
in my head. But then you move on and you don't
Yeah.
like think about it too much. You move on to the next thing. I always try to have a goal or a plan.
Yeah.
to keep myself busy and to keep moving forward.
Right. And usually too, a lot of times when people are reacting to you, it's not about you even. It's something that's
Right.
triggered in them. Like,
Oh yeah.
like one thing, Paula was on the show and we talked about Carl Jung's shadow work and how like you're supposed to like lean into the things that you're triggered. So it's like, oh, I always like that. Like when somebody comes across and they don't like something I've done or said, it's like, well, I've triggered you. What about, and I love to like
Right.
think about that,
Find out what that emotional response was.
Yeah. And I feel like comedy's so good for tapping into people's emotional responses.
Well, you need to, because people aren't going to be invested if you don't trigger their emotions.
Yeah. Which emotions do you like to trigger while you're on stage from the audience?
Well, first I'd like them to be sympathetic to me so that they'll listen to me. So, try to get them to warm up to me. But yeah, you try to you want to keep like attention, because laughter is breaking the tension. So you're gonna try to like create some suspense or something, or uh like have them on the edge of their seat, like waiting for the punchline or the whatever is gonna happen. Or, you know, I mean also like making people uncomfortable a little bit, but like as long as they laugh at the end to break the tension.
Yeah. What are some things that you'll talk about that make the audience uncomfortable?
Well, I love talking about my period.
Uh,
And I don't do that much. Although I do have to sing that song, all I want to do is make blood to you. But just to like yeah, use the like the feeling of discomfort to point out facts like about like, sexism
Yeah.
is a big one that I use. And
Do you
also gentrification.
yeah.
Are you a part of the problem? I'm not, yeah.
I am part of the problem.
I didn't mean
I'm sorry.
you.
No, it's okay. I know. I have to accept the truth about who I am, but I'm trying to do better. What do you think the audience then, like when you talk about that kind of stuff, like particularly I feel like I would think that feminist issues would be more of a trigger for people than gentrification.
Right.
I don't like, oh, how dare you? We love gentrifiers, like I don't think you're gonna get like people being as upset that you're making fun of gentrification compared to.
So one of the things I like to do if I'm on a show and it's all men and it's like usually that way, I'll be like, well, I'm the only woman here, so it's just pussy jokes for me. I gotta fill up my time just to you know uh just fill up the time with pussy jokes just to make up for the fact that I'm the only woman here, and that makes people uncomfortable, but also makes them realize, hey, that's a really lopsided lineup.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, I feel like, especially too, it's like 2021. I've been very cognizant of just looking at flyers that are being posted for shows, particularly after the pandemic, thinking like, okay, we all had a year in the house to kind of like come to grips with things. And it's like, wow, man, it's still like so lopsided. Like you said, why? Why do you think that is?
Oh, maybe they all live together.
It could be. Yeah, that might be. It seems like that's what people do. They have these little groups, these pods.
Yeah.
They're comedy pods and they just travel around together and do portable shows.
Right. Yeah.
Smart. That's smart. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. They're like a pack.
So maybe it's our fault that we're not in a pack. So
We have not passed the test.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like, is there any animals in nature where like men are in packs and the women? I know like meerkats kick the single female meerkats out of the mob. I'm trying to think of like I'm going to Google this later, but we'll get back to that. Okay. So let's get talking more about weird stuff in comedy. And then when you bring that up and you point to the audience's attention, like, hey guys, hello, I'm like the only lady here, and people get on board, do you kind of like dig into it more and like use it to kind of like touch on other areas of gender issues?
Sometimes it depends on like, what was in the news that day, or like if something happened to me that day. But sometimes I just want to talk about something else. Sometimes I don't want to talk about gender issues all the time. Only when like I want to point out a disparity.
Yeah. So what do you do to prepare for your shows? How do you get ready for what you know you're going to talk about?
Um, I like make a list to organize, like a kind of like a set list to organize my thoughts,
Hmm.
and um do some stretches. I try to, if it's like a big show, like a good show, then like, I'll try to run it through in the mirror to make
Yeah.
sure that I look okay when that I'm like that I'm doing funny things with my face and hands.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll remember to do them when I
Do you find that happens a lot? Like you'll run through your set beforehand or like prepare your set beforehand, then you get up there and it's like, shoot,
yeah.
what percentage would you say like of your set is actually what you had planned out while you're up there?
It's usually pretty planned.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll try to I'll feel like the audience would, depending on how the audience is reacting, I'll take uh, take another joke out my back pocket that I wasn't planning on doing. Um, if something comes up in the show, if someone says something, then I'll do different jokes.
Yeah. What about the audience? Do you look at them or do you look somewhere else?
I look at them, but I think that maybe I should look look somewhere else. um, like I'm just thinking of like all these like bad bar shows where like no one wants to be there, and it's like you look at their faces and you're just like, oh man, I'm sorry, I'm torturing you. I know this like isn't consensual.
Yeah. It burns a hole in your brain. Like I
Yeah.
can think about like, yeah, every person's face of with their look of horror.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember the joy of anyone, but I can remember the faces of horror.
Yeah.
Like, oh god, it's
Yeah. And also boredom and indifference.
uh, I could the boredom and the indifference, like, well, especially too, that can be equally infuriating, I find, especially if you're pouring, like you're like you said, talking about
Yeah.
something that's like more personal or more emotional. It's like motherfucker, like, "Grr."
Yeah. She just like feel something for me.
Yeah. Are you alive?
Yeah.
But I don't know. And then again, who knows what's going on with people, like I've just tried to change my perspective. I feel like, especially too, after this quarantine and realizing people are really just not something I'm going to ever understand.
Hmm.
So it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to respect you on your journey wherever you're at, and try not to like take it with me. Does it shake you if you're on stage and you catch somebody looking at you like indifferent or disgusted or any kind of reaction? Does that shake you to off your set?
No, I'll just keep moving on. I'll just move on.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
So do you feel like your stage fright has improved then since?
Yeah, like when I get into it, when I'm excited about telling a joke, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Um, when I'm really excited and I want to share something, it's not like when I get in that mind frame of just like wanting to share something, um, rather than wanting to prove myself.
Yeah.
That that's how I overcome it.
Oh, okay. What about comedy for you? Like, what do you think good comedy is?
Um, I think that you mean just stand-up wise,
Yeah,
or
or you could do no, I mean anything, I guess, because a lot of times like whatever you find funny is like will translate, I'm sure, to your stand-up, right?
yeah. I like stories. I like to be like emotionally triggered or involved. I think that's important in comedy. I think that turns of phrase and wording is also important. Um, it shows that you've thought about your material and if you're writing characters, um, it shows that you're paying attention. Um, I think that the element of surprise is also important because people laugh. Like the reason people laugh is because they were this is from like back in caveman days. It's because they were you laugh when you're relieved, like you're facing a threat, and that creates a tension, and then you find out that there wasn't really um, a threat to you, and you laugh as relief.
Mhm.
So creating that tension is also important in good comedy.
Mhm. Is there anybody that you try to model your comedy after, your stand-up?
My stand-up,
Mhm.
I can't think of I can't think of any stand-ups that I try to model.
What about any stand-ups comedy? Like, because I know that's a very particular question, like,
Mhm.
to model your stand-up, because again, what about in terms of comedians that you enjoy? Like, not that you've modeled your comedy after them, it's just
Right.
personally you
So
enjoy
I
watching
like to
them.
do stuff that I would think was funny, especially what I thought was funny when I was like in my 20s. So like I thought Kristen Shaw was really funny and like the whole like alternative comedy scene back then. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I like that stuff. So I try to, you know, that really affected my style.
How would you describe your style in like 3 words?
I would say sad. Um self-deprecating is 2 words. Um
I'll count
that's
it.
self-deprecating,
Yes,
that's three
yes,
words.
hyphenated. And what about number 3?
um I guess absurd. Although that means that's really broad. But
Is it though? Absurd, right? I think of absurd is like kind of a niche.
okay.
Yeah, I think absurd is I mean, I guess there's types of absurdists, but I feel like absurd is in its own lane on its own.
Hmm.
So what about then in vulnerability? Are you someone that embraces feeling vulnerable?
I just kind of I feel like I'm vulnerable all the time, so it's not like
Yeah.
I can escape it.
So that's just how you've been.
Yeah. Um yeah, like in both yeah, I just in my day job and in my hobbies and in comedy, it's like I'm always leaving myself open to uh to threats. So I'm just kind of always vulnerable.
Yeah. Do you feel that's where your comedy kind of evolved? Your sense of humor developed like from having this feeling of vulnerability? And you used it as like a, because like you talked about even with the cavemen about having like, we're okay now. So it's like,
Right, right.
because you grew up in Jersey City,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I think especially like myself, like as an adult now, you know, I always get really pissed off when you hear people talk about comparing educational systems because it's like you can't compare someone growing up in Jersey City to somebody growing up in like, Ridgewood, you know what I mean? Like no
Yeah.
matter what, no matter what, no matter what, it's like there's different experiences. And it's like, I think about for me, like if I grew up in Jersey City as a kid. My level of anxiety, like I'm an anxious person anyway. So like thinking about like, yeah, being anxious.
Yeah.
So do you think that helped shape your comedy at all?
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah. I mean, being anxious definitely shapes my comedy because like, uh, let me try to think of an example. It's like I'm always under the presumption that someone will attack me, you know?
Yeah.
And so that has and then like telling stories about that stuff while I'm on stage, like about how I wasn't mugged in Jersey City until after it was gentrified, you know?
Uh,
Um, so yeah. And about like, how people, made fun of me.
do you think though growing up in a city kind of influences people to have a better sense of humor?
Yes. I think that like my family has a good sense of humor. I think even my grandma, who can barely speak English, has a good sense of humor. And it's like you make jokes because you are living in anxiety. So it's a release.
Yeah. So what's the worst thing you'll joke about on stage?
No, I don't know. There's the worst thing. I don't know. I mean, I do.
Okay, maybe I should separate that question too, because I feel like there's things like that's such a tough word, like the worst thing. What about the question I want to ask is what is the thing you would joke about that the audience tends to get really turned off by, but you like to joke about?
No, so
And it,
suicide.
okay,
We were discussing
okay.
this earlier.
So that's the one you're gonna, definitely, yeah, put that out there and their buttholes start to clench up.
Yeah, and I could also do some, lighthearted rape jokes.
Uh, and those also, yeah, that I feel like it's the hard R word that makes people uncomfortable. I've noticed if you like sing it like rapey, it's like a little more palatable, or make it a fun character like Rapey McRaperson, people,
Right.
yeah. It's so weird how though, like play on words, how certain words will trigger people so much to they will shut down entirely.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I find myself obsessed with living in that space of wanting to do those jokes of just like, I want to make this funny because it happens and things are all fucked up anyway. So let's just joke about the weird fucked up shit. But what about you? Where do you gravitate, like in terms of the spectrum of being I'm gonna stay in the lane of comfortability, or I'm gonna go balls to the wall crazy? Like where would you feel you fall?
Well, I mean, it also depends on the audience, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, if there's like kids there, then I'm not going to do my whole set on rape and suicide.
No, would it pussy? No. Yeah,
uh,
no, okay, so depending on the audience.
mhm.
But what about overall? Like, would you describe yourself like as more someone that's going to be more edgy?
Yeah, I'd say that I'm edgy
Yeah.
in a sad way.
In an adorably sad
Yeah.
way. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man, the mortician that I want to have is you. So cute.
Yeah.
Oh, how do you think, do you ever consider your aesthetic to help convey what you want your persona to be?
Yes, but every time I try to do that, it doesn't work. So,
So what do
so
you
I
try
gave
to
up
do?
on that.
What do you,
Okay, so like I wanted to start using a stage name of Melissa Anchovy, and I like got like I made a shirt and everything, and like like no one cared or remembered my stage name. But like when I have my guitar, I mean, I would like to ideally, once I get booked for big shows again, um, like I would like to put on like a real performance. Like I want to get like a suit that matches my guitar, like a baby blue
The blue
suit.
one, yeah.
Yeah. And I just got a tattoo of my guitar. So I want to do like a joke where the reveal is my tiny guitar tattoo. Well, it's actually a big tattoo, but just like uh yeah, just use it as the tableau for the scene. Because I come from sketch, so you want the stage picture to look good.
Yeah. So do you think about that then? Has there been skills from sketch that have helped you in your like doing your stand-up act?
Um oh, so yeah, so I think you saw me do that you do the prop comedy where I do that magic trick. So where I talk about how uh I gained so much weight I can barely fit into my pants. It's just like all this camel toe. And then I feel like I'm giving away the joke, the punchline though. Anyway, so then I do a magic trick on stage, and that comes from sketch.
Yeah. Okay, so but then like thinking about like any other because you said with the shot, like you said in sketch, you're always like framing the shot was the terminology.
Yeah, think about the stage picture.
The stage picture. So this how would that play out in for you in stand-up comedy? Like you think
Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's like you don't like have furniture or props really on
yeah.
stage, so you're not like, because in sketch, like the props are jokes. Like if I'm not gonna. I mean, I guess I could like do a set where I'm like sitting down reading like a porn magazine. I mean, maybe that would work.
You could try it out. Do they still print porn magazines? Is that, I feel like
I have some I can bring.
you got your own vintage stash. Oh my gosh. So in terms of like comedy then, what do you think of the idea of cancel culture and performing, and like what role do you think it plays?
I think that canceling things in some instances is warranted, but it's really, you know, I mean, it's up to like the booker. I mean, it's, we live in a capitalist society. So if you book someone who's controversial and no one comes, then you know that not to book that person. Um, but you know, I don't I don't know.
I don't know if that would play out that way too. I think, especially like it's like, oh, like I think the booker's like, oh, you're controversial. And like I feel like the audience, like, you know what I mean? Like people are like, because I'm just like, again, I keep talking with people about cancel culture because sometimes I'm just like, I feel like it's like we're living in a time where we say these things, but we don't do any of the actions that that are real.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird, I don't know if you ever read 1984.
Yeah.
Double speak. Like I feel like we're literally living in this time of like double speak with things like cancel culture. And it's like, are we really canceling people? Like who's been really canceled? Like Harvey Weinstein went to jail for a fucking crime. Okay. Like that's
Right.
not cancel culture. Like,
Right.
and even when I saw Cosby when he was released, there was a lot of stuff on social media that was like, thumbs up, cause, and it's like, what the fuck?
Right. So if there's a crime, obviously, like the person should go to jail. So I mean, separating like the artist from the art is, I guess, something that people just have to do on an individual basis. I don't know.
You think it could be done?
I mean, I feel like it's just your personal choice. Like, are you going to listen to Michael Jackson? You know,
Yeah.
you still appreciate his music, even though, or can you appreciate Bill Cosby's comedy?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you think about it too, like, especially like I like to just think about all of this because like I feel like vulnerability is all tied in this together because it's like part of being vulnerable is you're opening yourself up, you're leaving yourself exposed to criticism, or like you even shared yourself embarrassing stories. You're going to share things that
yeah.
are embarrassing. It's like I know myself, I've done so many things in my life that are horrible and cringeworthy, and
Mhm.
I'm sure many people would be like, cancel her now, like what a terrible human, you
Right.
know. But it's like, again, it's just kind of like looking at things in degrees. But what I want to kind of look at is the complicitness. Like I feel like that's what we really need to address, is not this cancel culture, it's this rollover complicit culture. Because
Mhm.
it's like, how were all of these people able to get away with all of this shit for so fucking long?
Right. Because because it's condoned until it's called out.
Yeah. Do you find that exists in comedy in a more profound way, or just kind of mirrors what's going on in society?
I think it kind of mirror. Well, it could be in a more profound way in comedy because you are by yourself on the stage. You own your brand, you know. So it's not like Nike getting canceled. You know, it's a person getting canceled. Um, so I don't know if that
Yeah.
answered your question.
No, I know, it's like just weird. It's just like, especially I feel like everything kind of like, you know, because we're talking about stuff like, again, like you make jokes about suicide, and it's like, oh my God, like there's people out here like going, no, you shouldn't make jokes about suicide. And like someone's like, somebody right now is saying like my so-and-so killed or killed themselves and yada yada. Like it
Mhm.
becomes so, and it's like, this is human. Like this is where we're human. And
Mhm.
it's like, I want to be able to recognize that we're fucking going to make mistakes, we're fallible, but
Mhm.
we're also going to try to find the humor in this situation. So
Right.
it's just like, what, to what degree are we of people cultivating a better society,
Right.
you
Because there
know?
are comedians who just tell jokes for shock value.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they'll tell a rape joke just to shock people to piss them off,
Right.
and I think that's just obnoxious. but
Yes.
but I mean, if you're using your art to make a point, then I think that that's valid.
It's hard to do though. And especially like, do you feel that like how much of your comedy will you be willing to share with people, like in terms of like on social media? Because now there's these other platforms, like
Mhm.
we've, you know, you can perform on stage, right, and just be in the moment in that space and time. But now we have like these other modalities of sharing. So do
Right.
you find a difference between how you are on stage with what you'll share on social media?
So I'm not good at social media, so I don't I don't know how to do that. I try and it doesn't work, so that's not for me.
Oh, okay, okay.
Although my boyfriend was telling me that I need to go on TikTok, and I was like, "Ugh, well, I'm bad at all the other ones, so why would I think that I'd be any good on it?" But I don't know, maybe it'll work for me.
Try it out. Yeah. I have not cracked any of the social media codes yet at all. I have no idea. They get me very confused. But I do know whenever I try to share things, I I don't know, I find it more uncomfortable sharing stuff on social
Yeah,
media.
I get a lot of social anxiety from sharing stuff on social media.
I do too. And it's like I'll put something, I'm like, no, I'm not leaving that up, but I'll take it down right away and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's just like, where you see other people, I get so envious. I see people who are like posting all the time, like my whole feed is like them, and you're like,
Right.
mother.
It's also like, how do you have time to do that?
I don't, yeah, time. And then like literally, like for me, like again, this level of comfortability, like I don't feel comfortable with social media at all.
Mm.
So it's like, oh, it's like it's a different world, but it's so different again though. What about Zoom when you were quarantined? How did you embrace the Zoom
So I
call?
was working during,
Oh yeah.
I worked throughout the pandemic.
Okay.
So I was in the field walking around.
So yeah,
all-
it wasn't really much then for you. Because that was, I think, a big part of it too. Like some people were working the whole time. So it was like
Mhm.
this, like not
I
everybody
was an
was
essential
working from
worker.
home, huh?
Yeah, I got a letter saying I was an essential worker. So I could go on, so I could take the train and stuff.
Wow. Was that anxiety provoking?
No. So I found out that I had antibodies pretty early in the
Okay.
pandemic. So I got it um probably, I think, the last week of February or the first week of March, like, of 2020. So,
Yeah.
and I was basically asymptomatic except that I didn't smell anything for a week. And that was also before people knew that was a symptom. So they were also like like I was like, it's probably like an allergy or something.
Yeah. It definitely was here, I think, so much earlier, like as well, like in the country, like when,
Mhm.
so yeah, you had it like February. I think a bunch of people probably had it as well. And
Mhm.
nobody was going to their doctor. Like I know I got sick in March myself, and like they were like, don't go to the doctor unless, and it was like, I'm like, all right, I just probably have the flu or something, but
Right.
so weird. It definitely, I think, messed just with my head. I don't know about you and your head space. So
Well,
what
I was
about,
laid off for 2 months, and they
ugh,
were like the best 2 months of my life.
yeah,
I wrote 2 sitcom pilots, and
that's
I
awesome.
yeah, yeah. And some of them, so I put them in some competitions. They placed in like as quarterfinalists. Each of them placed.
Oh my
And
God, that's
then
wonderful. Congratulations.
or as a quarterfinalist, but like nothing happened because of that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's
And
really,
then and also like like I've been working on this book for a while, so I organized it and still working on it. But that getting laid off. Oh, and I started playing piano again when I was laid off. So started learning Polish. I learned how to make seitan.
you sound like you are the person that really embraced the quarantine.
I
You're like
loved
the
it.
human resource dream. Like when
Yeah,
they ask the question, what did you do with this time? You have the right answer.
yeah. It was like I was like having a blast at Melissa camp.
Oh my gosh, Melissa, well, we have loved having you today as a guest on Comedians Exposed. If you could tell the listeners where they could find you on social media.
Mhm. Okay, so you can find me on Instagram. My professional handle is Dirty Apartment Scab. And then on Twitter, it's just at Melissa Surach, although my name on it is Melissa Anchovy. But yeah, those are the two I use, Instagram and Twitter. And I mean, I'm on Facebook too, but I use it to like lurk.
It's so weird how different they all are too. Like all of the social media outlets, I feel like they all target a different emotional response.
Hmm.
Very strange. Yeah. And Facebook is definitely good for lurking.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to thank you again so much for being a guest.
Thank you for having me. This
Yay.
was fun.
This
This was
was
deep.
fun. I'm glad.